All right, welcome in. It is a Memorial Day edition of BloodHorse Monday. He's Sean. I'm Louie. Thanks so much for joining us again this week here on BloodHorse Monday, the podcast that gets your horse racing week going. You understand me? This is how you start every single Monday.
How we spend our holidays now?
Well, apparently, yeah, right. No, it's a legitimate question about how Sean has chosen to start your young adult life, and you're choosing to start your weeks with me. It is troubling. I'm with you.
Yeah,
it's not...
I know. If spending my holidays with you is where I've come to in this sport, I must be on the downward slope.
It is you're like 6-7 years old. They're deciding what your future plans are going to be, that kind of thing in horse racing.
Doesn't look like I'm going to have much of a stallion career, so they're looking for second career options.
That's right. Give me a jump horse soon. But no, this is an interesting time in the horse racing calendar where we're a week out, 9-ish days from the Preakness. It almost feels like there's such a rush to get to Baltimore after the Derby.
Yeah.
There's such intensity in those 2 weeks that almost the 3 weeks, which we would think of as a quick turnaround in general terms for the Belmont, feels like we're slowing down. Right, exactly. Have you had time to reflect on things? We've seen some of the comments come out. Obviously, the Maryland stewards making no change in the Preakness. Any changes in Sean's thoughts about what was an unbelievable Preakness?
No, I still think that performance by journalism was just incredible. The fact that he overcame everything. It's been interesting to see, when we talked about it last week, it was obviously just 2 days right after the race. We've seen a lot more reaction from different people since, mainly, I think, from Steve Asmussen on the Steve Pick show about his thoughts on, the stewards should have done
By the way, very appreciative of him being as honest as he was. Our sport needs as much of that kind of conversation as it can get.
Exactly. Yeah, because Clever, again, definitely got the worst of it down on the inside. But I still think making no change was the right move. Maybe they should have done something as far as a fine or something with the jockeys afterwards for the riding. But I still think as far as the race scenario, I think that was the right move.
It's a tough job and not one that I am very well equipped to do. But
that's why we sit here to review it and not the ones.
That's why we're in a studio. That's exactly right. But Robert Clay is going to join us now here from Grandview. And I am excited to have him in because he is involved in a horse named Baeza, who ran in one of those races with the aforementioned journalism, the Kentucky freaking Derby. How about that? It's a couple of those things. That's right. That's Santa Anita Derby. That's exactly right. Well, Robert, happy Memorial Day. I appreciate you jumping on a little early. We almost interrupted your golf game, which we don't want to do on this show.
Well, thank you for having me earlier.
It's no problem at all. How has your spring been going? What has the whirlwind been like since that decision to run in the Santa Anita Derby, and then of course making your way to Louisville for the Kentucky Derby 151?
Well, it's been an exciting spring. I mean, the Derby week was almost surreal. We spent so much time worrying about getting in the race that by the time the race came around, we weren't nervous at all. we spent all our nerves, but it's been an exciting time. I think we knew we had a nice horse, and he's sort of proven that he belongs in this group, and we're looking forward to the Belmont.
Obviously, he has the pedigree, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to match up with these top horses. But, he's not a stakes winner yet. He was coming off a maiden win when you ran him in the Santa Anita Derby, yet he ran such a strong third. Maybe he would have ran a little bit better if he didn't get stuck in some traffic there. Maybe could have gotten up for at least second. But a lot of people come out of the Derby looking at him as one of the top 3 horses in this division. And that says a lot for a horse that hasn't, got that stakes win yet, right?
That's right. I mean, he was green in the Santa Anita Derby. It was first time Pratt was on him in the Derby, and that's a tough race. He was finishing strong, and I think he just gets better with every race. He's training well. I think we're looking forward to an exciting year with him.
Talking with Robert Clay, part of the ownership of Baeza. When you hear that Flavia Pratt is going to be aboard there for the Kentucky Derby, what goes through your mind? Because I'll be honest, I threw him into a bunch of wagers based on Flavia telling me, I'm going to ride this horse.
I think he really wanted to ride this horse. I think he was as nervous as we were. He didn't know what horse he was going to ride until Thursday. It was a little bit crazy. But I think he wanted on him. We wanted him. He's going to ride him again. Walking back through the tunnel, I feel like he said I maybe waited a little long to push the button. He had a lot of horse under him.
Well, he's got a chance to push the button a little bit earlier here, coming up in the Belmont Stakes. Just how's he been doing since the Kentucky Derby? He's gone back to California to train with John Shirreffs. Just how's he coming into the Belmont?
Really well. He had a really good gallop a week ago, and then he had his work on Saturday. A really strong work. He'll ship in on Thursday and work next Sunday. So I think everything's going. I think John's happy.
Robert Clay with us here on BloodHorse Monday. Take us through, you mentioned a couple of times waiting to get into that Derby field. And it's one of those things, Robert, that I know we're not supposed to do it, but I know we're all convinced when the draw happens, those are the 20 horses we're going to get. And invariably, unfortunately, usually someone, spikes a fever or something like that happens and we lose one of those starters at the gate. But walk us through your thought process night after night when there's just no defections early in the week. How are you starting to feel as we get to, I don't know, Tuesday or so?
Well, we thought, we were thinking the same way early, 7 days out, usually something happens. But every day John and I sat in the chair in the shed row and nothing happened. And so we started to get a little nervous. But then at the end, there were two that went out. As you say, and inevitably, or it usually happens that way. But it was a very strong security and vetting process that was taking place. And so it didn't surprise us completely that we got in, but we have to admit we were pretty nervous.
Well, Grandview Equine, not only co-owners of Baeza, but you're also the breeder of Baeza as well. Obviously, this dates to Puka, the fantastic mare. She produced Mage, the Kentucky Derby winner, Dornoch, the Belmont winner, and Baeza, third in the Derby. Now
leave out the Haskell, like he didn't win the Haskell.
Oh yes, the Haskell too for Dornoch. But a lot of success on these last three kids here, all bred by Grandview. Take us back to that 2018 Fasig-Tipton sale when you were looking at Puka. What was it about her that drew you to her and thought that you wanted to take a chance with her?
Well, it really started when we bought 3 shares in Good Magic, and we wanted to support him, and so we went to the market to buy a couple of mares for him. And I wanted to try to find a mare and foal to Gun Runner. He was just going to stud. I was a big believer in him. And Alex Solis and Jason Litt helped me. And Alex was living in California at the time, and he'd watched that Finnegan's Wake go, that Powers Colt. And, Puka herself was in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. She was talented. She was a lovely mare. We put her on our list, and we got lucky and bought her. Of course, we had no idea that this was going to happen. But we had that Gun Runner foal, and then we bred her to Good Magic, and then finally Mackenzie, because we bought a share of Mackenzie. So it's just she's the one that made the news.
Well, you mentioned, having those shares in Good Magic, the sire of both Mage and Dornoch. What was it about him that you thought would be successful as a stallion?
Well, I mean, I was sitting next to Barbara when he won the juvenile in Del Mar, and he had all the ingredients, really. He had the pedigree, and he had to turn a foot, and just a nice horse to take a shot on.
You've got Baeza then for the Belmont, a Mackenzie colt, as you mentioned, in this spot. Is there a desire on your end then just to have, is it a what's the best way to put this? I don't want to say an insurance policy, but just a diversity of options then to have multiple sires with the same broodmare that way, moving to Mackenzie away from Good Magic?
Well, you mean breeding them consecutively or
yeah,
not?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I think you can't breed a mare to the same stallion, for 5 or 6 years in a row. You've got to diversify a little bit, and we had an investment in Mackenzie, and so we mixed it up.
And so the Mackenzies, we've seen some good results for sure. Obviously, the Good Magic speak for themselves at this point. Getting to that 1.25 miles at Belmont, you got to feel real confident going into that race.
I think Baeza, he'll go all day long. Distance is not going to be his issue. John's got him very fit. He gallops in 2 miles, and he's a really, really strong, beautiful colt. And I don't think distance will be his problem.
The 2 weeks after the Derby that I described earlier, that frantic time, was there a moment in the Baeza camp where you thought about shipping to Baltimore, or was the plan always, hey, if we don't get it done in the Kentucky Derby for whatever reason, we'll give the horse more of a quote unquote normal 2025 kind of schedule where he's going to go to the Belmont instead?
We never crossed our minds really once he had not won the Derby. I went back to the barn, and John said, we're shipping back to California. And I think it was just too obvious choice.
Well, take us back to 2023 when Mage is running down the stretch for the Kentucky Derby. A lot of times we hear the story of the ownership cheering for the horses they're coming down the stretch. You were not part of his ownership, but as the breeder, what is that experience like watching a horse that you bred win the Kentucky Derby?
Well, it's sort of a dream of a lifetime. And in that case, our expectations were low, and when he started making a move, I lost my voice for a couple of days after that. But, it's another surreal moment. So you just hope that happens in your lifetime. So it was a big deal.
Now take us into the business side of this a little bit when it comes to Puka. So Mage ends up winning the Kentucky Derby. Then during the summer, you have her next son, Dornoch, starting to, run well in the maiden races. He ends up going on to win the Remsen Stakes. You make the choice to put her into the sale that year. Obviously, Dornoch ends up winning the Belmont after that. But in your mind as the breeder, what is the importance of getting her in the sale right after the Derby win? You might be, I don't know if you'd be kicking yourself now if you're like, oh, I should have waited for Dornoch too, or I sold her. But just, that immediacy of, if you win the Kentucky Derby, we should look at what we can get for this mare.
Well, you hit it on the head. I've been kicking myself ever since. We're in the commercial business, and we felt the time was right. We were hopeful to get a partner, and we came very close to getting a partner in that sale, which would have worked out better. But our experience over the years is a mare throws a couple of stakes winners, and then she doesn't throw many more. But these blue hen mares, like she has become, they're very, very rare. And so we put a price on her, and we were happy to take her back, and we did take her back. But before the sale was over that evening, John Stewart went down to see her and made us an offer. We had a filly, and so we were going to carry on the line with the ownership of her filly.
Now, so you're not part of the ownership with Mage or Dornoch. You are with Baeza. After seeing their success, what was it that made you want to stay in with him? And when CRK Stables, Lee Searing, when he comes in, just how did that relationship come to be where you're able to stay in on Baeza?
Well, we had Baeza in the sale. He brought a good price. He was a lovely horse. And really right after the hammer fell, I said to Alex, let's see if we can buy a quarter of that back, or if they'll let us stay in for a quarter. So we went over, and Dottie and Gordo was doing the bidding, and we said, can we keep a quarter? And she said, she didn't say immediately, but she said, let me check. And they said yes. So we were fortunate to be able to be there, the partner, and we've gotten to know the Searings, and rest is sort of history.
Robert Clay with us, Grandview. I have to ask you something, because it's something that seems to happen on this show that I wasn't ready for when we started this thing with owners, especially how personally you talk about these horses. when you talk about Puka and who she is and what she's meant to, your operation, to your life, frankly. Does that ever catch you off guard, how much you fall in love with these animals?
Well, it doesn't catch you off guard, but you do. Yeah, I mean, especially if you've bred one that goes on to be good, and fillies, fillies are going to come home. You're going to breed out of them, and so you do sort of become attached to those fillies and their daughters and those families, and you become attached to the family as much as anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Robert, we really appreciate you taking some time on the Memorial Day. What's our plan for the course today? Are we trying to break 80, 90? Is there a number that we're shooting for today when we get out to the golf course?
I'm just trying to win that $5 back that I lost yesterday.
Oh, okay, man. That's golf bets, man. I'll tell you what, it gets brutal out there. $5, man. I don't know if we'll be able to go on. Well, safe travels to Saratoga. We obviously safe travels to Baeza and everything else. Best of luck and safe trip to the Belmont.
Thanks to you both.
All right, thank you, Robert. There you go. Robert Clay joining us here on BloodHorse Monday. I've always wanted to ask someone about that sort of relationship, and I appreciate him delving even further, which is it's not just that the mares come back, they're daughters. Yeah. And that can continue so on. I remember interviewing Wayne Catalano, of all things, after his he was 2,500 or 3,000 wins last summer in Ellis, and I'm very apologize because he's exceptional. He's a great interview too, and I asked him about training kids of horses that he had trained before, and do you see the traits? And he said, yeah, you do, and once in a while it's not good traits, that kind of stuff, but you get to know them as far as their personalities and those different things, and it's fun to hear from a guy like Robert about she not necessarily not caught off guard by being in love, but you just do, you get used to them and their personalities, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and they become members of the family especially when you have those multiple generations. I mean, we've seen some of these bigger breeding operations that have kind of these long running families, and he talked about the importance of the fact that even though they sold Puka, they're keeping her daughter. Right. And so that way they can kind of keep the family within their own family and keep breeding from that. And, just that really, a lot of times we don't talk about the broodmare side of it as much.
You're right.
But just the lasting impact that some of these families have. I mean, you've seen places like Juddmonte and Godolphin kind of master that over the years. And a lot of times, these great horses, we always talk about the stallions. We always give the stallions all the love, but it's the broodmare families, the long-running ones, that really play a huge role in all of this.
Yeah, I want to thank Robert for stopping by. He was presented here on BloodHorse Monday by FanDuel Racing. Download the app now and bet now with FanDuel Racing. Just those stories are so fascinating as we look forward now to a Belmont Stakes that is. It's interesting to watch these, Sean, because the Saratoga thing makes it different. The obviously this year, Sovereignty going straight to it makes it extraordinarily different. I was wondering with you this week, is this the second best option we could get to a Triple Crown runner? Is a rematch of the top two in the Derby plus the horse that filled out the trifecta, and one of those horses went on to Baltimore to win the Preakness, and now we get all three of those horses in New York.
Yes, this
okay. Right.
For a horse skipping the Preakness, this is
a solid consolation.
Yeah, this is the best consolation we could get. You have, it's kind of like that dramatic journalism went to the Preakness and won while Sovereignty sat out. What's going to happen now that journalism's doing the 3 races in 5 weeks? Sovereignty's coming in on the 5 weeks rest. It almost feels like it's that kind of butting aheads of the thing that we were all debating for the last 3 weeks. Whether the Preakness should be moved or not. Will journalism end up winning and proving that the races shouldn't move? Will Sovereignty end up winning and show that maybe the races should move? But then when you throw Baeza in on top of that, and you have the top 3 finishers of the Kentucky Derby coming back in this spot. Baeza is a horse that we've all kind of marked down in the winter as he's developing. Yeah. Will he end up making it to the Derby? He makes it to the Derby. He runs well in the Derby. He, maybe if he got a little bit of a cleaner trip, he ends up being either closer to journalism, maybe even closer to Sovereignty at the end of it. So you have that part of it as well. So it's going to be probably a small field, but when you're looking at it, the talent level in this field is going to make up for the short numbers, and it's going to be one great race.
So something I think we have to balance in these conversations is quality and quantity. Yeah. And you brought it up. This could be a quality race, right? we're going to get some other quality races coming up here as well. We saw some of the names mentioned for the Matt Winn, for example, at Churchill Downs. And I don't want to skip past the Belmont. That's not what I'm doing on this show, I promise. But we're seeing and we were having this conversation the other day, how all of the 3-year-olds, the river, if there's a river of horse racing, it leads straight to Louisville for the Derby. And then once we get to Churchill Downs, it kind of breaks into 5, 6, 10 different rivers of paths that horses could follow. One of those is going turf racing again. One of those is sprinting again. One of those is, trying a Matt Winn or trying a Belmont or running in the Preakness. They're all very different things. And I think it's been a very good development this year that we're having conversations about all of those paths. And frankly, Sovereignty kind of forced that on us.
Yeah.
And I get people being upset about Sovereignty not going. I was at a Memorial Day Eve party in our neighborhood last night, and I got asked about it. It wasn't about journalism running and winning.
Over a week after the race.
Over a week after. Hey, why didn't he go to the Preakness? Not who won. Not, oh, wow, what a stretch run. No, why didn't he go? And so I get it. That's the storyline. But what's happened is because of those conversations, I've gotten to say X, Y, Z. Here's what Godolphin wants to do. Here's what, Bill Mott likes to do. Here's, Sovereignty as a horse doing this, blah, blah, blah. It's been hopefully something we can build on and move forward from, because it shows the diversity of our sport. Yeah. So often we're a Derby sport, and you and I love the Derby. There's nothing wrong with loving the Derby for sure, but we don't have to just be a Derby sport, even just with 3-year-olds.
Yeah, we want to spread love to all the divisions here. And that's one of the unique things about the Derby, is it is kind of that meeting place of horses that are going to break away into a bunch of different divisions. You have the milers, you have the sprinters, you have the turf horses, who all aimed at the Derby because it's the Derby. And it's almost like once they run in the Derby, it's like their status level increases a little bit, to where you start paying attention to what they do the entirety of the rest of their careers, where maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. And so it does bring some added attention to those sprint races. You see every year where usually maybe 1 or 2 of those horses come back in a race like the Woody Stevens on Belmont Stakes Day. And so that's keeping you paying attention to the sprinting division. Right. This year, you're going to have Flying Mohawk pointing towards that triple turf series out in New York with the Belmont Derby on his radar. So it's going to have you paying attention to that 3-year-old turf division. As these horses get older, you look at a horse like Endlessly last year, who we're all looking to see if he can now get back to where he was before the Derby in that older turf division. So you're paying attention to these other divisions, kind of for people who maybe don't follow the sport full time like we do. Those Derby horses are the ones where you can kind of latch on and see where they go afterwards, and kind of keep you focused on everything else that's going on.
We saw Domestic Product win a Grade 1 going 7 furlongs last year as well. So I mean, you get those horses. Sometimes I used to host with a guy named Mike Gandolfo, and a mutual friend of ours, and he used to say the Derby is the showcase for the best 8th grade basketball players.
I like that. Yes.
And then by the time you get to the fall, they're expected to be kind of in high school, and then when they're 4 years old, they're essentially college athletes, and then when they get to 5, they're pros. Right. And I think that's a real thing. And I remember since I've gotten to be around horse racing, and it's not a very long time, less than 20 years, it is a reminder that I've gotten to see so few of those horses come along. Gun Runner really stands out as a horse that we got to watch grow up and get big and get powerful and really, really dominate those races. When he was 5 years old and running in those spots, get out of the way. I mean, he was a machine at that point. And it's just a reminder that as we go through the 3-year-old season every year, that give these guys some time. They're going to figure it out, because you might be a setter when you're in 8th grade because you're tall, but you got to become a point guard at some point if you're never going to grow again. These kinds of things. So yeah.
But that's why it's so exciting to see, the horses that came back in the 4-year-old division this year. You look at Fierceness setting a track record when winning the Ali Shiva
that's a great
off
example.
the bench.
Off the bench.
So
that's exactly right.
It's nice to see these horses continue racing and continue to kind of show off what they can develop into. And I mean, we have big races coming up this weekend. We have Derby winner Mystik Dan running in the Blame at Churchill coming up this weekend.
Post time in that British Cup alone.
Yeah. And you're looking at Sierra Leone coming back for the Stephen Foster at the end of the Churchill Downs meet here next month.
I think it's really good that race.
Yeah,
he's gonna being back at Churchill a lot. I'm excited for that one for sure.
That long stretch, definitely. Yeah. But then you look at that, and then you also have the Sovereignty, the journalism, the Baeza. You have these 3-year-olds where you're already kind of looking at it like these are going to be big players when we get to the Classic at the end of the year. And when you have the expectation,
the Pennsylvania Derby and the Haskell, everything in between. Yeah.
Well, when you have the expectation of we have a really good crop of 3-year-olds, and we have a really, really good crop of older horses. We haven't even mentioned Wedevario.
Right.
But
Skippy runs today in the
in the Hollywood
Gold Cup. Yep.
But when it's the end of May and you already have this excitement for the Breeders' Cup in November of the meeting of the 3-year-olds and the older horses and the kind of race that's going to put up, that's what's good for racing, is the fact that we can already look at it. All right, we want to follow every single step that these horses will take between now and then and see where we end up on that first Saturday in November. Hopefully everybody makes it there. We can have one fantastic race, but that's part of what makes the summer so exciting after the Triple Crown is we have a solid set of 3-year-olds, a solid set of older horses, and we can't wait to see them match up down the line.
The 3-year-old set's especially interesting that you just brought up, because there are those at the very that we consider to be in that top tier. The 3 top finishers in the Derby. I think it is the good thing about the Derby is that actually those we've considered to be the thing. Go ahead.
Well, when I talked to Mark Cassey ahead of the Preakness, when he was going to run Sandman in the Preakness Stakes, he said that, looking at the division, he felt like there was a clear top 4. There was Sovereignty, Journalism, Baeza, and then he threw in Rodriguez as well, because we haven't had a chance to see whether or not Rodriguez is that top or not.
Agree on Rodriguez.
All 4 of those horses are going to be in the Belmont. So we're looking at maybe like a 6-7 horse field, but 4 of them are the top 4 horses in the division.
You brought it up with Robert, by the way, for Mark Cassey to throw him in. He's not a stakes winner.
Exactly.
That's a maiden winner, man.
That shows you how much respect people have for what Baeza's talent is.
That's exactly right. No, and it's very obvious to people like Mark Cassey. I'm excited because I think we're going to not just get a great Belmont, because I do think that's going to happen. I think Rodriguez is going to be on the lead, and we're going to see Journalism right behind him, and we're going to see Sovereignty right behind them, and Baeza's in there, figured it out at some point. We got all 4 of those horses in the same. Cripes, give me a Belmont with those 4. I don't care. Like, let's figure it.
Well,
I mean, for my betting book, not so great. But let's
throw in a horse like Hill Road, who he hasn't really had the chance to show what he's made of yet. He wins the Peter Pan. This is really going to be his first opportunity to really show us what kind of talent that he has. And so you throw him on top of what we already got. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. And then when that finishes, you come back the very next day here to Kentucky, and you got 4 Kentucky Derby horses running in the Matt Winn Stakes. Incredible.
Let's go. I am with the Belmont, and I know I'm over too many mentions of this horse. I apologize on this show, but Gosker.
Oh yeah.
When I heard he wasn't
not too many mentions of that horse ran the race of his life in the
Preakness.
And when for whatever reason everybody jumped off of him after the Lexington, we didn't. Okay. I know we both did, and we both loved it. I get to that. But
that horse got me some money.
But I mean, he proved that he's up there with the rest of this division.
No. There's no doubt about it. He's a late bloomer for sure. But that's another horse that we get to add into this mix at a high level.
Yeah.
Right. He might not be at that Baeza level yet, or at that Journalism kind of level yet. But had he won the Preakness, he would have done all of the work, and it would have been totally deserved.
Yeah.
Totally deserved.
Yep.
And so that's the other one. By the way, underrated how fast the Preakness was this year.
Yeah. Nobody really talked about
No one talked about that.
Yeah.
And the fact that Journalism still closed into it, which is impressive. And the fact that Gosker was still rolling, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he got tired at the end for sure, but unbelievable.
He was running strong still.
It'll be interesting because, Walsh has East Avenue pointed to the win now.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be interesting to see what Gosker's next step is. We see the reports of, he's going back to New York for things or whatever. It will be interesting to watch because I do think there are so many good options for these horses now.
Well, the other part of it too is Godolphin. Godolphin not only has East Avenue, they have Sovereignty.
Right.
So you'd imagine, I would think Belmont would keep Sovereignty at Saratoga for the Jim Dandy, which then would make you think maybe East Avenue gets pushed towards the Haskell at a mile and an eighth, unless they decide to maybe shorten him up or something after the Matt wins, something like that. So then
East Avenue will be second off the bench in that as well, second in the form cycle then too.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Yeah, makes
and
sense.
a good timing after the Matt win to be in the Haskell.
Yeah, because I mean, all things considered, Sovereignty might want another break. I don't know.
Just don't know. Well, if that happens, then we'll end up seeing where he ends up. But that does then make an interesting decision for Walsh as far as where to put Gosker.
Yes.
If East Avenue is going to be in the Haskell, I know the Haskell has been mentioned as a possibility for Gosker. Does Gosker then end up in the Jim Dandy? Does Gosker end up in the Indiana Derby? There's a couple different options for him at that point.
No, I think there are a lot of good options, frankly. He's He's fascinating because I think that's a running style that wins any kind of race.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
What he does, it wins everywhere. It won in the short stretch at Keeneland. It was almost a winner at Pimlico. Like that's just a running style that will work everywhere. And so Gosner's one, if he shows up and you leave him out of an exotic trifecta kind of play, you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
They just did. I mean, the rest of the year, seriously. He feels a lot like Seize the Grey did last year, except he just doesn't have that. He doesn't have the wins.
Yeah.
But a lot of like, oh, does he belong here? And then Caesar Gray goes ahead and wins the Pennsylvania Derby too, right? He just,
and was a winner.
By the way, bothers me. Last year, we gave Sierra Leone a pass for not liking Saratoga.
Nobody gave that.
No one gave that to Caesar Gray at all. And the second he got off that track and got to Parks, he wins a Grade 1. I mean, sure,
he never got enough respect last year.
Well, obviously, but we give passes to certain horses and not to others. And Caesar Gray, it's a bum take by people. They need to be better. That's all I'm saying. By the way, if you are looking for a high level of success, the weather isn't the only thing heating up in June. And having produced two-time Breeders' Cup winners, Stormy Liberal and Golden Sense, as well as Grade 1 winners, the Dare Manor Yapone and War Like Goddess, the OBS June 2-year-olds and horses of racing age sale is the place to find ready-made talent ahead of the summer's top races. So before the juvenile auction season comes to an end, come see what the 2-year-old source to the world has to offer at OBS June 17 and 18. June 17 and 18. Great partners of ours here on BloodHorse Monday. Really appreciate the OBS folks. They've been with us, frankly, since the very beginning of this thing. So I do want to thank them. And want to thank, by the way, I don't think we ever thank people who hang out with this show, and we should start. It's fun. One of the things I like to do on some of the other podcasts that I'm involved with is to look up the most random place in the world that people are listening from.
Okay.
And then just shout out that town, like in Poland or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those.
So are you?
I would love to do that on
right
here,
now?
but I'm only partners with BloodHorse, and I would need the okay from my partners with BloodHorse.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So.
Well, I approve of it.
I think it's a great.
I don't know if I have that kind of power to decide that, but
or like
I
shout out someone who comments on YouTube or something, like because we're getting a lot of YouTube comments, which we appreciate, by the way, and I need to be better about replying to those. But it's fun. It's fun. We're getting a little community around the show, and I appreciate it.
Yes, we appreciate you guys watching, you guys listening, whether it be on YouTube or any of the podcast sites, Spotify, anything like that.
You can watch us on Spotify as well, on top of the YouTube viewing opportunity. So if you want to know what we look like, that's a great way to find out.
Although we don't blame you if you don't want to look at our faces while you hear us. I'm surprised you want to hear our voices, but
it's a stunning reality.
Our voices are slightly better than our faces.
Speaking of community, we've lost some trainers, unfortunately, in the last week in our sport, and we get the note yesterday about Christophe Clement passing, and
real surprising too, at least for me.
And not someone that you and I knew very well personally, but I have to say, Sean, as a guy who I am older than you, and as a dad and all of those things, you start to think about what it might be like when you're not around, just naturally with your kids. And to read, the man sat down and wrote his own obit, essentially. And it's beautiful, and it's about his family, and it is about his legacy not mattering unless there was someone to take it on.
Yeah.
And so Miguel's going to step in, his son, and I am so unbelievably impressed by that post and the forethought to write it.
Yeah.
And to so his family can have something forever, to know exactly how he felt. I mean, like his in-law kids, he mentions them glowingly. Can you imagine going on, having grandkids, he's not around, but like having that note, at least knowing exactly how he felt about you, all of those things. Plus, frankly, and no one wants to say this right after someone passes away, Christophe Clement was a damn fine trainer.
Yeah,
just is. And so hopefully that legacy continues on, because it would be great if that barn continues to give us many, many great horses around, New York, East Coast, etc. Shipping all over the place for sure. But just wanted to mention him, and just how, as a dad especially, I appreciated the note, because if that were, if my dad had written something like that, or if I'm able to leave something like that for my children, I'll be really proud.
Yeah, it was a powerful message that he posted, or that he wrote up, and just seeing, his love for the game, his love for his family, how much doing the game with his family meant to him. He got his passion originally from his father, and he's now passed that down to his kids as well. We just talked about family lineage when it came to the broodmare side when we were talking about Puka, but you see that family lineage as well in the people side, yes, as well. And just hearing how much it meant to him, I can't imagine Miguel, obviously this is a very tough weekend for him, but just knowing that you had the full support of your father, seeing those kind of words must mean a lot to him, especially when you look at him going forward. One of the things you always, we mentioned, I never had the chance to meet Christophe myself.
Okay.
But one of the things you always hear about Christophe was just how great of a horseman he was, how much he really cared about the individual horses, how he would try to build relationships with the individual horses, and just, the pride that he took in what he did every single day. And he said it himself, it wasn't really work at the end of the day. It was just him doing what he loved, surrounded by people that he loved. And it was, the sport needs people like Christophe in it. And it's a huge loss for the industry. It's a huge loss for his family, anybody that knew him. But, he was such a great trainer. He had such great success. And, I was looking through his information yesterday as far as his stakes wins. I mean, he averaged about 100 graded stakes wins every 10 years. Like that's incredible.
I know.
And he got his first graded stakes win within the first half year he was training. And so he was an incredible horseman. He's leaving a lasting legacy. And hopefully Miguel and the team will be able to carry that on in the Clement stables going forward. But such a huge loss for the industry.
It really is. And I appreciate you bringing up the fact that he's just a really great trainer. Yes, both things can be true. Could be a good dude, be a good trainer, and so it's a shame to lose people of his ilk. Another person that we lost this week, and someone that you and I do know, you probably a little better than me, was Larry Demeritte, and I posted on Twitter a photo I took of him, just kind of standing in a crowd, and all I wrote was, "It's how I'll always remember Larry." He had that varsity jacket on with his name on it, right? In Demeritte stables over here. And he was smiling.
Yep.
And his teeth were taller than he was for whatever reason. Larry was a very diminutive man, but had the smile of a 6'10" man. He just did. I'm going to get emotional. And the barn is an interesting spot, right? The backside of any track is an interesting spot because it is busy.
Mm-hmm.
It is it's a touch chaotic all the time because you're dealing with animals, and some are going to the track, some are coming back from the track, and there's always kind of movement. You never felt that around Larry. No, it was always calm. It was always happy. It was always, now were there serious moments where sure, of course, work needed to be done, etc. But the general tenor around him was so positive. It was so easy. Everyone wanted to be where he was. And I remember they had that stall all the way at the back of Churchill where there was a grass area.
42.
There it is, right, all the way in the back. and Dante, who you and I, his assistant that we've gotten to know a little bit, you better than me, just that team. And Larry was the first trainer of color in 35 years in the Kentucky Derby, and we should not go 35 more years before that happens again. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I have the answers to that, but certainly meeting a guy like Dante, meeting horsemen like Dante and like Larry, I don't know how that needs to come about, but it's something that I certainly want to happen again in my lifetime, numerous times, frankly. And so I'm hopeful that we're having those conversations as well. But Larry in general, I love the story that he tells of, I won the training title of the Bahamas twice, and I was like, I can't just stay here forever.
Yeah.
What a great, I'm so in awe of people that pick up their lives and just go figure it out. And Larry's one of those guys, picked up his life, figured it out.
Yeah.
And his reputation in Kentucky could not be better. He just could not.
And the driving force was he watched the Kentucky Derby on TV. I want to say it was Secretariat's Kentucky Derby. But he saw it on TV and he's like, I want to go be part of that. And all the years that it took him, he finally got there in 2024 with West Saratoga. And just every day going back there and seeing him that week leading up to it, just the huge smile on his face. You could see how much he enjoyed it. One of my favorite quotes from him was when he was talking about, his disease that he's been dealing with since the 90s. And when he said, well, I learned that doctors can't count. because they gave me 5 years to live in the 90s. They gave me a couple months to live back in like 2018, and here I am. I'm still here, and I'm still going.
Yeah.
And he just had such a positive outlook on everything. He was always, you could tell how thankful he was to wake up every morning, go see the horses, to have a horse like West Saratoga in the barn to go see every single morning. And
he told the story. The doctor said, "You got to stay overnight for treatment." He said, "I can't do that. I got horses to see in the morning."
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's just his love for the game, his love for, just what he did. And then his love to just share his story. You see a lot of people sometimes when they're going through the things that he's gone through that, they don't really want to talk about it, or especially in a situation like the Derby where you're getting asked about it every single day for a month leading into it, where you don't want to, like, you get tired of saying it over and over again. But he was so happy to talk about it every time because he knew that he was potentially inspiring somebody else that was going through something similar.
Yep.
And one of my favorite stories about Larry, I know I told you this on another show that we did, but just to show you the kind of person that he was, you have all the chaos of Derby time going around. He's got a horse running in the race. You have, everything that comes involved with that, all the interviews and everything. The Tuesday before the Kentucky Derby, I had my mom with me on the backstretch. She was in town to go to the Kentucky Derby. And I took her over to see Larry because she had heard about him and she wanted to meet him. They talked for maybe like 5-10 minutes, but she told him that she was visiting. Well, 2 days later, I'm in the track kitchen at Churchill Downs and I see Larry and he comes up to me, big smile on his face. And the first thing he asks me is, "Oh, how's your mom enjoying her trip? How is she doing? How is she enjoying it? Is she having fun?" It's like all the things that are on his mind. He remembered that he met my mom. He remembered that she was visiting. He was interested to find out that she was still having a good time, that she was enjoying herself. And that just shows the kind of person that he was. The fact that everything that was going on in his life at that point, all the chaos of the Derby, and he still was thinking about that. He remembered that. Was, to me, that showed showed his character. And I was lucky. I got to see him Derby week this year, have a quick conversation with him. I know Derby last year, he never showed it, but I know it physically took a huge toll on him. But still, just to see his positive attitude every single day after that was incredible.
Rest in peace to both of those gentlemen. Thank you for making our sport better.
Yes.
That's all I can say is for that, because in very different ways, very different circuits, very different manners, but both certainly worthy, and I'll miss both. But Larry, man, just his presence here in Kentucky, very personal for both of us, and so may he rest in peace that way. We're going to talk to Joe Perez from BloodHorse. He's the managing editor. We want to get his thoughts on the Fasig-Tipton sale and all of the the increase is the word in horse racing right now, especially at the sale. So we'll get Joe's take on that. And here's my interview with Joe Perez about the Fasig-Tipton sale. And as promised, he is Joe Perez. You can find him on the socials at @BH_J Perez if you are so inclined to go find him there. But of course, part of the sales team, great sales team we have here at BloodHorse and BloodHorse.com, was at the Fasig-Tipton sale there at Timonium. After the Preakness, got to seize on people being in town, I'm sure, Joe. But your overall sort of impressions of the sale early on, especially dealing with some weather issues. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. And I'll leave it a little open like that.
Yeah, Louie, great to be here, and I appreciate you having me on to discuss the sale. I think heading into the sale, there were a lot of question marks, and talking to consigners and even to people with Fasig-Tipton in the days leading up to it, the tone was, I don't know. They really weren't sure what to expect because things were changing almost by the hour. Because of the impact of rain in the Timonium area, in the Baltimore area that week leading up to the sale. I think starting the Monday before, so we're going almost a full week in advance of the sale, through that Sunday prior to the sale, I think there was only one day without rain. And in many cases, it was torrential rain or just constant rain. There was even a tornado warning at one point. So the impact on the track at the Maryland State Fairgrounds was pretty significant, and that contributed to a breakdown midweek, which resulted in Fasig-Tipton having to have repairs done to the track and then ultimately make the decision that they were just going to do gallop only on Sunday. And I think it was close to probably a 30-70 split in terms of the number of horses that actually got to breeze in the undertax show.
And
So
I know,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I know there's a big difference, especially at this particular sale, in total sale price between those that were able to breeze and those that were able to gallop. So the hand ranking ended up being deserved from some of the ownership and the consigners.
Well, I think that was one of the things I wanted to monitor throughout the sale, was just what the difference was going to be. And it ended up being about a $26,000 difference for the horses that breezed compared to the ones that galloped. However, it didn't stop people from going to the mat for some of the horses that were gallop only. The second leading sales price for a horse, which came in 50,000 short of the top mark, was a horse that didn't breeze.
Got it.
So when you have the pedigree, when you have enough black type in your catalog page, the buyers are going to go for you, and we had that happen. So I think at the end of the day, it ended up not being as big of a difference. Although there were some consigners who would tell you that if their horse did get to breeze, if it did get to breeze, they would have gotten, in their estimation, a significant more return on their horse.
We did see a Gervin filly attract you. You mentioned the top earner here, 1.1 million in these sales. I'm always amazed what happens, Joe, once it gets going and the right people are in the room and we get up to these kinds of numbers. She'd been sold previously, though, for pretty big numbers at Keeneland as well. So I guess not a totally stunning number here, but hey, $1.1 million for a filly, that's nothing to sneeze at.
It is nothing to sneeze at. And I think there were a lot of different things in play with that particular purchase. I think the first thing is that it was the first ever purchase for the Memo Racing and Ammo Racing collaboration. So they were willing to make a statement, and also that the buyer on hand, Kerry Radcliffe, along with Alex Elliott, they had a lot of faith in what was coming out of the Waiver Tree consignment. And to be honest, Waiver Tree knocked it out of the park during this sale. They were easily the number one consigner. If you look at the numbers, they had, if you take the number 2 and number 3 consigners, their total purchase price of their consignment fell short of what Waiver Tree did.
Oh, wow.
And that's really tells you something about the efforts that they're doing over there. And Waiver Tree, I believe, had 3 of the top 5 off the top of my head. I might be off just a little bit, or it was something close to that.
Sure.
But they definitely, from the consignment standpoint, made their presence felt, and the buyers loved what they had to offer.
You have a piece up right now about Steve Asmussen. Speaking of going to the mat for horses, in a partnership, Gus King, obviously, the name on this one, but an Uncle Mo colt. And, it's interesting, Joe, and this is an obviously longer conversation for another time, but, when a sire passes away and that line is left to that next group of progeny, I'm always interested to watch what happens, especially in this kind of part of the process. We saw it last year with, for example, like Seize the Gray winning a couple of grade ones. Well, once Arrogate had passed away, that line was available for him to go to stud that way. We see this Uncle Mo colt go for 975. We know the hopes and dreams of all of those in the King and Asmussen camp. What do you think they liked about this one?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it still comes down to the pedigree. And I think, Steve didn't want to put Derby aspirations immediately on this colt. So he really wanted to parse his words very carefully and just basically say, when you have a horse like this, you get to keep the dream alive. And and I think that's the same whether you're Steve Asmussen, Gus King, or anybody else in the game. That's your dream. And whether you're dropping 40,000 on a horse or 900 plus for a horse, that's the end game. You're punching a ticket for a dream and hoping that dream comes to reality.
We see an Uncle Mo colt go for 975. We see a Nyquist go for $1 million. We see a Gervin go for 1.1. Is there another sire that caught big money that you were surprised to see, or maybe these buyers are trying to get in ahead of the curve? Is there a sire out there that stood out at the Fasig-Tipton sale?
Well, the one that really got to me really was the number 2 selling horse, which was the Violence colt. The conversation I had with one of my colleagues was later in the sale, and this sale is also noteworthy because it went 12 hours or just short of 12 hours.
Wow.
So it was a bit of a marathon. And one of the things in the years that I've covered this particular sale is, as you get later into the catalog, most people have left.
Right.
They're not sticking around. When they're done conducting business, they're done. But the seats around the sales ring were empty, but the ones that had bodies in it were a lot of the top buyers from earlier in the day.
Okay.
So you kind of knew something was coming, something was brewing. And I had noticed that Donato Lani had not made a purchase in the previous 11 hours. And sure enough, he was the one who struck for this Violence colt. So I think it says something when the people who are really looking to make a mark at a particular sale are the ones who are sitting there waiting, biding their time, and then they strike for this big horse. Coming in with $1,050,000.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw you, Joe, at the Preakness this year, obviously Preakness 150, the final one, at that rendition of Old Hilltop. Lots of change coming to the Maryland circuit in the future. This sale is a hallmark of the Maryland, horse racing year there with the Fasig-Tipton sale at Timonium. Moving to a new training ground there in Maryland, do you expect the sale to stay at Timonium moving forward?
I do. I do think the sale will stay there. I think there's a lot that the buyers like about it. I think it's very accessible for Mid-Atlantic, whether you're a breeder, whether you're a consignor or an owner. It's just a very accessible location. The other thing, and it's been, I feel like, a really strong point of the sale the last 2 years, is that the international buyers like the location. They like that there's the dirt track. They have also made their presence felt significantly over the last couple of years. And I think, if you're coming in from the Middle East or from Europe, it's easy to get to. You fly into Washington, D.C., and you make the short drive. And, we had a group of Libyan owners who were there, recently formed group. I believe they spent $2.75 million on 6 horses, including 2 that were around 700,000. So they were there. You had a lot of sheiks from Saudi Arabia who are not afraid to throw down their dollars to find the dirt horses that they want. So I think there's a lot to be lost by changing locations.
Mahmoud Mooney leading that group's efforts on the ground here in stateside, at least. And they were not shy about spending over $2.9 million at the sale. So no. God bless them. Let's go. Let's get them all in here and keep it rolling that way. Well, looking forward, Joe, as far as East Coast sales are concerned, what should we be looking for next?
Well, I think the thing that I'm curious to see is how this particular sale in Maryland impacts anything with OBS June. There were several outs from this sale in Timonium where you have to figure you have consigners who are redirecting those horses to Ocala. There were even some consigners who sold Intimonium who lamented whether or not, if they had saved that horse for Ocala, rather, they would be able to have gotten more money for that horse. So now let's see what happens as we wrap up the 2-year-old season for sales, and whether or not Ocala benefits from anything, whether it's the scratches or the very vigorous bidding that we saw in Timonium. If Ocala can see that carry over, we might see another record-setting sale.
He's Joe Perez. Find him at BH_J Perez on the socials, of course. BloodHorse.com. There's a sales tab right at the top. Very easy to follow along with all of these things. And I got to say, Joe, as a guy who came into this largely doing handicapping shows and different things, the sales side has been really fun to get to understand. It really is. There's a lot going on.
It's wild. And I come from outside the industry, and coming in and trying to wrap my head around sales it's a work in progress.
There you go. All right. Well, hey, and also it's a holiday. I appreciate it very much. You giving us a little bit of time here on BloodHorse Monday, so that go be with your family, Joe. Get out of here. All right.
It's my pleasure.
There you go. Joe Perez with us on BloodHorse Monday. Appreciate him jumping on. Let's get Sean back in here. We'll wrap up the show. We do it next. All right. Thanks to our colleague Joe Perez there at BloodHorse. BloodHorse.com, by the way, for all of the sales information that you could ever possibly want. We've got you completely covered over there. Whether it be Fasig-Tipton or anywhere else, we've got you covered for sure over there. It's fascinating stuff, the sales. And it's something I'm coming to appreciate doing this show more, is, so much of my work prior is about either storylines or about handicapping.
Yeah.
Frankly, right? And so getting into the sales side of things, and, the interview to open the show with Robert, or whatever it might be, it's been fun. It's nice to peel back the curtains, get inside here and look around at everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
I mean, when I grew up, I was a racing fan first and foremost,
right.
And I always focused mostly on that side. So that's one of the things that now being with BloodHorse has definitely opened my eyes to. It's just this how much goes into the sales. I mean, obviously you knew that there's a lot that goes into it, but now seeing it firsthand, hearing the stories of it. I mean, we heard Robert earlier talk about the decision that once you have a mare that has produced a Kentucky Derby winner, how you have to kind of come to a decision there about entering her in a sale, getting the value of that. And there's a lot that goes into it, and it's interesting, especially a sale like this where there was so much adversity kind of thrown in the way for them to, with the weather and everything, for them to bounce back.
Right.
It's pretty remarkable.
It's good stuff. Appreciate Joe jumping on with us today. Big weekend coming up at Churchill. Obviously today, big day at Santa Anita. We will have a big day, Stephen Foster Preview Day, on Saturday at Churchill Downs.
By the way, shout out to my home state with the Penn Mile on Friday.
Well, Penn Mile talk.
Penn Mile, Penn Oaks. Always loved when I was in Pennsylvania. That was always one of my favorite race days to go to. So one of my favorite racing memories is when Catch a Glimpse beat the boys in the Penn Mile a few years back. That place went crazy.
Were you there?
Yeah, I was there.
Love it.
That was one of my favorite racing experiences. Was just seeing the fan base of Penn National freaking out as she came down the stretch. It was awesome.
Shout out to Penn National. But if you are going out or going to be betting on your phone, check out FanDuel Racing. Download the app now and bet now. With FanDuel Racing, we get the Stephen Foster Preview Day. By the way, one of my favorite things that's happened in horse racing the last 4 or 5 years are preview days.
Yeah.
Just give me all the preview days. Haskell Preview Day, Stephen Foster Preview Day, Kentucky Downs Preview Day. Yeah. Give me all of them. And even if they're not at the track that they're eventually going to run the thing that they're previewing, I don't care. Give me the preview.
And now we're getting to the Claiming Crown Preview Day this year too at Colonial Downs.
Right here into my veins. You understand me, Sean Collins? That's what I need. I need all of it. Can you imagine the payouts on Claiming Crown Preview Day?
That's going to be awesome. I'm really excited for that today. It's I've always liked the Claiming Crown, but last year when I got to spend a lot of time talking to the connections, I really fell in love with the Claiming Crown last year. And so to now see a preview day coming up, I'm really excited.
Once you're around all those HBPA folks from different states who are all just slugging it out, trying to figure it out, you're like, okay, I get this. Like, I totally understand this. Yeah. And then they get to come to Churchill. They get to, if they win, they're on the Twin Spires for a win photo. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Right. So, no, it's great. But the blame will be race 10 this weekend. And we see the Derby winner, speaking of Mystik Dan, back in this spot. I'm very excited about a different horse in here. But, bro, this came out great. This, I mean, this is salty.
This should be a grade 2.
This is salty. Yeah, right. And so, any thoughts on this? Is Mystik Dan, is this, I think the mile and an eighth is probably about what he wants to do, right?
I think this is going to be the race where we really find out what we have with Mystik Dan this year, because he had, coming off that long layoff, I tossed the Malibu out. I don't think that distance is what he wanted to do at 7 furlongs. I think the trailering him from that point, from, I guess, where was he? Louisiana, probably, all the way out to California. I don't think that was the right choice to make. Well, it turned out to not be that way. So
it just didn't work out for whatever reason. Yes, right.
And then
they try him with the Pegasus.
Yeah, then they try him with the Pegasus right back after that. They stop on him. He comes back and runs such a great race in defeat to Saudi Crown, who's no slouch, at Oaklawn. So I think now we get to find out, is Mystik Dan back? He's running out of his own stall at Churchill on a track that we know that he likes, obviously.
Great point.
And if he runs great here, I think we're set up for him to join the Fiercenesses and the Sierra Leones as we in the older horse division as we keep going throughout the year. And if he doesn't run well in this spot, then we kind of know what we have with him at that point.
The forgotten horse in this field is Most Wanted, who ran second to Fierceness, running a track record in the Ali Sheba. If Fierceness isn't in that race, I think he wins by open lengths.
He always shows up.
Ahead of Hall of Fame, by the way. So this is just another horse. You were talking earlier in the show about this older horse, especially the male two-turn dirt division, whatever we want to call it. Most Wanted is one of those horses for sure, a 4-year-old son of Candy Ride. And I wonder if this isn't when he starts to have his full breakout.
Yeah.
Because then he's got a shot at the Foster if he's in form, right? Then they could take a little bit of time off, maybe point to the Gold Cup, something like that. And then obviously the Breeders' Cup would be on his ledger. But, the speed figures coming out of that one match up with anyone in the older horse division that isn't named Fierceness to this point this year.
Exactly.
So, I mean, at some point, Most Wanted is it's not going to be a forgotten horse. Frankly, I think he'll be a pretty big favorite on Saturday.
Yeah, and he was a late developer last year. Yes. He ended up, was it the Oklahoma Derby? I think that he ended up winning last year.
He almost won the Clark as a 3.
Yeah, and he almost won the Clark.
Right.
And he comes back and he ran a very strong second to Skippy Longstocking, which also, by the way, was a track record. And then he runs second. So if you
Brad Cox has just got to be like shrugging, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like,
but
congratulations.
So if he runs second, I guess we're expecting a track record to fall this weekend at the mile and an eighth distance here, because apparently when he loses, you break the track record. So
the other one is Post Time in here.
Oh yeah,
and he's coming out, ran really, really well. Obviously in the Breeders' Cup, they ran him out. Then in the Cigar Mile, didn't work out that well when he was there. He just won an optional claimer at Laurel, and I'm not exaggerating. It was 13.5 lengths. It was an absolute workout. So I have nothing to base it on. I'm just hoping he's in good form because he's a really talented, really, really talented son of Frosted. The thing about him that's interesting is it stinks because he'll never be as good as Nick's Go. So like the Maryland bred thing isn't available to him. But man, it's as far as the title of being the best one in recent memory. But he's got a chance if he can pick this race off, especially he'll be a really good spot.
Well, who knows? Nick's Go he was good when he was younger, but he got way better as he got older. Maybe Post Time will do the same thing.
You know what I mentioned Gun Runner earlier in the show? Nick's Go is way better example. Letting horses mature. No, I'm being very serious. We knew Gun Runner's ability at 3. We did not know that with Nick's Go.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love Nick's Go. I'm a big Nick's Go fan. Yeah. But I love what they do with Post Time because they look for the right spots to try him against the top competition. And then when they need a confidence booster or something like that, they just drop him in and let him romp in Maryland company. And it's been such a great strategy. And he's run so well. And he hasn't picked up one of these big wins yet, but he's run so well against this open competition. And so it would be great to see him have a breakout performance here in this spot. And another thing with him too is, he can go to one turn, he can stretch out to these mile and an eighth, he can run really in any of these spots. And I just love seeing horses that do that. It's kind of like the old time horses that would just go to wherever the best spot was at that point in time.
It's interesting watching Brittany Russell, the trainer here, manage his career too, because he wins the Carter at 7 furlongs, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. But she's tried him here at the mile and an eighth. Look, son of Frosted, so mile and an eighth shouldn't be an issue as far as his breeding and different things. But just again, 5-year-old horse. We get to watch him develop. We get to watch him grow up. Maybe he can develop into that 2-turn kind of horse. I do think a mile and an eighth is probably where he caps out.
I would think so, yeah.
I think the mile and a quarter in the Breeders' Cup Classic probably not for him.
Yeah.
Which is why I think that she tried him in the mile last year, the dirt mile. But no, this is a salty grade 3 field.
We haven't even really mentioned, Hall of Fame.
In here
we know there's always been a lot of high expectations on him. We know Brooke Smith of Rocket Ship Racing. He's very, very high.
Our favorite lunatic on this show.
Yes. He's probably watching. Hello, Brooke.
Hi, Brooke.
but we know he's very high on him.
Yeah.
We also have a horse like Antiquarian, who a lot of people, he was kind of that now horse going into the Belmont last year. He didn't race for a while after the Belmont came back, won his allowance race, and now is jumping back into stakes company here. So it'd be interesting to see
Alexander
how he's
Helios
developed.
won a grade 3 this year.
Yeah.
This is a
Yeah,
field,
the horse
man.
like Vanishing in there.
Yeah.
Best Actor's got some back class in him. Katona, this is for a grade 3 on a preview day.
Let's have some fun.
This is a pretty good
Let's have some
Had this
fun.
field shown up in the Stephen Foster, I would have been happy. And so the fact that we're getting this in the preview for the Stephen Foster in the Blame, I think is great. And then you're going to throw Sierra Leone in on top of this field when we get to the end of the month.
Yeah,
I'm very excited for this weekend.
It really is. Again, if you are going to bet the races this weekend, please check them out over at FanDuel Racing. Download the app now. Get bet now with our friends at FanDuel Racing. We appreciate them hanging out with us here on BloodHorse Monday. You and I are both devotees because we live here in Louisville of Churchill Downs. You know what's been really nice? We haven't had to talk about the turf course at all. And no. I want to do something right now because I've been critical of how that was managed or not managed or whatever in previous years. It hurt my soul when they didn't have turf racing at Churchill Downs for many meets, unfortunately. They are doing it right now, and they deserve the kudos. It looks great. The racing's been really fair. Different types of horses can win. Different running styles can win. They've done a great job. It's been nice to not have to worry about that. So thank you.
Yes, it's been this year.
There's no good way to say that. They just but they deserve the credit when something positive's happening. It's happening.
Good for you for criticizing, but then also giving credit when the problem gets fixed.
A lot of people. I just want turf racing at Churchill. That's all. I love but there's nothing like the Saturday. Like this coming Saturday is an exception because there's so many graded stakes. But just a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and you get that late pick 4, and it's a turf route, and then a dirt route, and then a turf sprint, and then a dirt sprint, and you can have that that melange of races. I love that stuff. And I'm spoiled by it because our home drag is Churchill freaking Downs.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's a heck of a way to be spoiled. But I just as a bettor, especially, and someone who likes different kinds of races, it's nice to be able to have all of those in the same sequence.
Yes.
So it's nice to have those things back as well. Well, he's Sean. I'm Louie. Happy Memorial Day. Hopefully some time with your family, some time away from work, whatever it might be as far as those things. But of course, we always encourage you to subscribe to the magazine. The QR code is now up. For those of you watching either at Spotify or at YouTube, go get that physical copy delivered to your house once a month. Make your coffee table look as beautiful as it possibly can. And of course, BloodHorse Daily available at bloodhorse.com. Costs you nothing. And it's an email to your inbox. All of the top headlines around the sport every single day from the great folks over at BloodHorse. Thanks to Robert. Thanks to Joe. And of course, thanks to Sean for hanging out with me, Louie Rabaut, on BloodHorse Monday. We'll be back next week with another edition of the show, getting ready for Belmont. A little bit closer by the time we get there, of course, and we'll have a nice review of Stephen Foster Preview Day. For Sean, I'm Louie. We'll see you in a week.
The BloodHorse is dedicated to the improvement of thoroughbred breeding and racing for over 100 years. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and save BloodHorse Monday on all your platforms. For the latest news, analysis, and insights, visit us at bloodhorse.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.